Good job today, man. It's one at a time, and we'll get the job done. Y'all know what to say. On three. 1, 2, 3.
And the home of the Jets.
What's up, everybody? Mr. Jet Central. I feel like I haven't talked to you in forever, dude. Where the hell have you been?
I know, dude. I was actually thinking about that this morning. I like woke up and I'm like, dude, I haven't talked to Tyson in a minute.
How you been?
Good, man. Good. Excited for the draft, dude. It's coming up.
Yeah, less than a month away. Got a lot to talk about. You got Darren Muji's press conference, Aaron Glenn, Woody Johnson met the media. That's always a good time, and all the rumors, speculation. So, where do you want to start? You want to start the press conferences because I'm really interested to hear your takeaways from it because I walked away pretty encouraged. We'll start with Darren Muji, where obviously the owners meeting. It's kind of like a freestyle event with them. They kind of get asked all kinds of questions. What were your takeaways from the GM?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. It's one of these things where it's like, I feel like naturally as football fans, we're all kind of like waiting, dissecting every line, especially if it's like, guys from like a new regime, right? Where it's like, we haven't really seen any of their draft picks or how these guys maneuver. So whenever you're in a situation where you're a diehard fan and an interview or press conference comes out, it's like, you know what, like, is he going to spill the beans on something? Is he going to maybe tip his hand? Like, for example, we actually heard Kellen Moore talk about, just the added value of having like a creative weapon on offense, right? In pertaining to the NFL draft. So everyone's, kind of natural thought is like, oh, well, Tyler Warren does a lot of different things and stuff like that. But, with Muji and Glenn, man, I really didn't get the sense of any sort of, they're like tap dancing around questions. They're, scared to meet with the media or anything. It just kind of felt like, hey, we're us. We're going to do us. We're going to run this team the way we said we did it, or we're going to do it. And it is what it is. Deal with it.
Yeah, I think they speak with a lot of confidence. They come off very prepared, and they don't get blindsided by any question. They think they're pretty thorough with their evaluations of players, and they can speak openly about it with confidence. I like that. Now, the first question we have is, Ian, where did you get your hat from?
Dude, so I got this on sale, man. I really don't have a ton of Jets merch. I want to change that, but like, because my favorite logo is just like that old school one, like that classic oval, the one like I grew up with. But they don't really make that logo on like a lot of different stuff. But this one was on sale. I got it off Fanatics. Actually, you know what? If I have access to the chat, I'll find the hat and I'll just drop it in the chat because I see that question a lot, and I feel I'm always just trying to drop the link always. But yeah, it's a A-frame type of hat. Hold up, let me find it and I'll drop it in there for you.
You're the man of the people right now. You're helping give like fashion tips right now and giving out.
Bro, it's just a hat, man. It's just a hat. Let's see.
So with Muji, the one thing when you hear him speak, you want to figure out how they approach free agency, and when they start explaining the signings, what their mindset was, where they also talking about how they retain their own players, their vision going forward. So I was really fascinated by that. The one question I have for you is the question that he asked was interesting with Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner about retaining your own players, talking about Muji. And he's like, well, right now I'm focused on the draft. After the draft, it's something we're going to revisit or talk about. And I get this funny feeling they're going to make a move there, man, where they probably, whether they wait until after June 1st, until, Mosley and Aaron Rodgers and probably Lazard are off the cap, or they do. But I think they're going to try to keep some of their own and make that statement like, listen, like even Aaron Glenn said, I want to keep good players, good young players. Those guys are both could be top of the team. It seems like they're going to make a move, dude, to keep these guys.
Dude, I mean, that's the hope. Obviously, it kind of feels like fans really want that Garrett Wilson extension done and over with. Whereas with Gardner, it's a bit of a different story because we had that elite play in the first 2 years. Mm-hmm. And then last season, just a bunch of problems. Still, a solid year if you're just taking a look at like starting cornerbacks in football from all 32 teams. You know, it wasn't god awful, but man, there were a ton of issues. And you know, I was kind of thinking about like, and I think we were talking about this question when Muji first got the job. It's, hey, do we try to push to re-sign one of these guys now, specifically Gardner, because he is coming off the down year?
Yep.
Do you want to maybe buy low? You can get him at a cheaper price now because he's coming off a down season. You know, because is Gardner really going to ask to become the highest paid corner off of a bad season for him?
Right.
You know, like probably not. But now after we've seen a couple more extensions at the position, now it's like a bit of a different story. It's a talking point. It's in articles and it's actually being asked. It's, you know, it's coming up obviously. So, you know, I think ideally you'd want to get the extensions done, but objectively speaking, I'm not going to put the pressure on them to like extend them. Like I'm not going to sit here saying like, where's the Garrett extension? Where's the Garrett extension? Because at the end of the day, again, just taking my jet hat off for a second, right?
Yep.
They didn't draft them. They have not been around them. They don't know how they are as players. They don't know if they maybe fit the system exactly. They don't know how, you know, they are maybe in like the practice field, the meeting rooms, like, and chances are it's probably totally fine. And it's just like, we're overthinking it. But if you take this example and you put it on like a different team, for example, like New Orleans Saints, right? If like from the outside looking in, Chris Olave is a really, really good player.
Yep.
You know, at wide receiver. Kellen Moore, offensive coach. They don't really have a ton of wide receivers, you know, pass catching options that are like legitimate threats. You know, the Saints should sign Chris Olave. But if Kellen Moore comes out and is like, you know what, hold on, I kind of want to wait until after the draft. I want to maybe wait until training camp because I haven't worked with him. I don't necessarily know exactly how I'm going to use him. I don't know, you know, we haven't really talked all that much, or I didn't draft him, or whatever the case is. You know, from afar, I'm like, okay, you know, I see where he's coming from.
Right.
Well,
you even like,
but we're watching these guys every single snap.
But even Aaron Glenn said that, because the one thing that Aaron Glenn said that I really liked a lot was that he's like, I don't care about last year. I don't care about last year. I care about this year, and you know, my regime, and then moving forward. Especially when you talk about Garrett Wilson, like, oh, Garrett Wilson last year was frustrated, this and that, and he wasn't used however way. He's like, listen, I've spoken to Garrett Wilson myself personally many times. He's fine. We're good. And I like that. Like Aaron Glenn's team has like that proactive approach where he's like, listen, I'm going to sit in front of these players, talk to them, say, what do you want? What do I want? Can we meet in the middle? Great. If not, we'll figure it out. But like, I like his approach there. Where it's like, listen, we've talked about this, and like they're diligent with stuff, and it's really encouraging. And the way they talked about Jamie Sherwood was really good too. Like, listen, he's a rising star. He's our quarterback of our defense. We wanted to bring him back. Is really important to us. That's a statement to the locker room as well. Like, listen, we kept one of our own. We saw what he's doing. We kept him. And I think they're going to keep that same practice with Sauce and Garrett. But it was interesting to hear him talk about Sauce Gardner too, where it's like, I talked to him as well. He's like, he's not going to have 15 all-pro years. You're going to have a year that's a little bit lesser to your standard, but it's still a very good year. And I expect to bring him back. So I think he handles it right, where he says, like, I'm demanding, not demeaning. All these little things that where it's like, he's going to push his players to be their best, hold them accountable, but also reward them as well. So I think it was really encouraging, man. Like, again, all you can do is figure it out based on words. You got to see the actions come training camp, talking about accountability, everything like that. But it was really interesting. And the one thing I really loved, where I was like, dude, I was running the house. I was excited. I was like, he talked about, everybody's asking about, what's your scheme going to be? What's your defense going to be? What's your offense going to be? He's like, right now we're collecting players. Let us collect all our talent first, gather all our pieces of the puzzle, then make the puzzle. Let's not predetermine what we're going to do without knowing who we have. That's how you maximize your potential of your team, dude, especially Justin Fields. You know what I mean? You can't say, listen, I want to run this defense. Then you have three guys that aren't going to succeed in it. Then why are you even doing it? So they're doing it kind of seems like they have a good blueprint in place. That's a plan that can be successful.
Yeah, dude. And that approach, by the way, the link was too long for me to send in the chat, but it's off the hats from Fanatics. I'm looking at it now. It's on sale, $24. It's New York Jets New Era A-frame 940 adjustable hat. But what was I going to say?
How he's using his players.
Right. So I think that kind of approach speaks to best player available. You know, if we don't necessarily have set in stone schemes, we're just going to go out and target maybe, you know, the best player on the board, in our opinions. Of course, somewhat linked to position of need, right? Tackle, tight end, something like that. But, it doesn't, there's this thought in my mind, because again, dude, with whenever you have new regimes coming in, you never know how they're going to operate. We don't know exactly what they value. Like, for example, Trent Baalke loved the athletic skill set. He valued the athletic skill set, the measurables, the athletic upside over like college production, over injury concern, over floor of a player, over positional versatility. He wants the athletes. He wants the top end athletes. So, for example, we saw the who was it, Walker over Hutchinson with that number 1 overall pick back a couple years ago. What happens, dude, if Muji's built like in a similar fashion and he wants to go with the athletic freak? What happens if he maybe doesn't really value athleticism all that much and he wants the polish?
Yeah.
Is he going to be one of these GMs that strictly draft for team need? I think there's a lot of different questions, and in time we're going to have the answers to these questions. But right now, whenever you have, and like you can make the same exact argument with the Jaguars at 5.
Yes.
For example, if Gladstone, right, new GM coming in for the Rams, if he really values like that athletic upside, I could see them passing on Mason Graham, and all of a sudden Mason Graham could be on the board for the Jets at spot number 7. Granted, he'd have to get by the Raiders at 6, but that could vary. Like I feel like this draft is going to be complete chaos. No, I think to answer your question, man, I like how they're kind of keeping everything open-ended. I think they're not locking themselves in or cementing anything. Like, here's our system, you better learn it. It's more of the adult approach, which is, here's our group of players. Let's try to build the systems around this group of players and kind of adjust moving forward.
I even liked Aaron Glenn's answer when he asked about putting together his staff. And he's like, ideally, everybody thinks when you get hired, you hire all your friends. He's like, no, I hired the coaches I thought were the best fit for my team as I move forward. Like, I want great teachers, because they're going to have a very young team. Their focus is young players to mold into what they want as Jets. You got to have great teachers and communicators. And that was a big priority to him. And then when he talked about, he had a lot of, and I'm not being a fanboy here, but just a lot of really good answers that made me feel a little more comfortable, where Cimini was trying to bust his balls a little bit. Like, well, as a defensive-minded head coach, what do you think about this? He's like, hold on. I spent the last 7 or 8 years studying offenses, studying special teams. I've been preparing to be a head coach for the last 7 years. So I'm not going to be a one-dimensional head coach. I'm going to have my fingerprints on every facet of this team. Offense, defense, special teams. And I have a big say in the draft too. Like, he knows what's going on. And he's very, he's proactive and he's invested into it. And then you look at it, you see his scouting background. When you ask him about players, dude, he's breaking it down like this, man. Like, I like this, I like that. Like, Saleh or other coaches in the past, they give you some nonsense or kind of fluff, and you kind of see they kind of give us on the surface. He can go into detail. When you ask about Stevens or Cisco, like, the answers that you give, you're like, all right, you may have questioned the signing, but you're seeing what their mindset was, why they signed the player and took that chance. And it was impressive to listen to, which means nothing now, in September, but as you try to get a feel for this organization, how it's being run and how they're going about handling their business, I thought it was really encouraging.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we're always talking about, right? There's got to be a method to the madness. These guys are getting paid millions upon millions of dollars to make decisions, to spend millions of dollars too. In regards to like Brandon Stevens, Aaron Glenn, it was either Aaron Glenn or Muji that had the detailed response with Stevens. I believe it was AG.
Yep.
And he talked about, his length, maybe, stuff was going on in Baltimore that isn't going to be like the perfect alignment with the New York Jets. Like, in other words, he's going to be utilized in a different fashion. Like, that's what we're talking about, right? That's that backstory with why the Jets went out and made that move. I think it was Connor Hughes that asked that question, like, oh, he's coming off a down year or a bad year or whatever. Like, can you justify it, or can you kind of dive into the details behind why the team went out and did this? And Glenn, again, he had those answers, pretty black and white. And so as a fan, you're listening to that and it's like, this team does get it. They have a plan, and method to the madness here. They're not just like desperate for players. Here's a bunch of money. Can you come save our franchise? We really need a corner. I guess let's just go sign this guy. It's like, no, we wanted him. here's a decent sized deal. And even though he might not be or coming off the best statistical season last year, we view him in a different light. So that's kind of that proactive approach. Like, hey, I can take him and, what would he be with us, as opposed to what has he done so far, which I personally really, really like.
And I liked it. Like, they came off very, very prepared, very detail oriented. Like, listen, we know what you're going to ask, and we have the answers because we know what we're doing. Like, it's like adults in the room, especially with the handling of Justin Fields, which I thought was really interesting, where they're speaking with confidence. Like, listen, they want to ask questions about Pittsburgh, this and that. He's like, listen, go back to Ohio State. They said he can't process the defense. He can't read defense, do all this stuff. He can do this. He wasn't being put in those situations. Like, they literally broke down the reasons why they think they can make him succeed, and they want to build it that way, where it's like, all right, like, they're not giving us, coach cliches and coach speak. Like, no, this is what we think, and we have confidence we're going to do that, especially with Justin Fields, where everybody's like, oh, they're going to run the ball a lot. He's going to be running all over the place. Like, no, we want to be a passer. We want to throw the ball because he's done it in the past, and he can do it here. So you're building up his confidence. It's just a whole different mindset here, where it's more creativity. It's just more open-mindedness. It's kind of like, I kind of feel like we've been so, I don't want to say narrow-minded, but kind of like just boxed in and never get the results we want. Where these guys are like, they're opening up all the avenues here for these players to really get the most out of them.
It feels like a much more open-minded, self-aware approach, where it's, because with Saleh, we had like a lot of, and look, Saleh, he didn't work out, but I will say, I think the 49ers got a pretty damn good defensive coordinator. Like, he does have some nice traits to him, right? But I think in the transition, listening to kind of like how Saleh, Ulbrich, Hackett, Downing, Keith Carter, all these different guys throughout the last couple of seasons, how they would operate, how they would do things in the offseason, how they would do things in training camp, right? For example, like, you could take any one of these things. Gardner not traveling with number ones. Well, it's not really what we do. And then fans would be like, well, why not? And it's just not, what
that's our system.
Yeah. And that, if that's your belief, fine, that's your belief. But it seems like with the Jet, with Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji, and granted, we haven't seen anything, dude. We haven't seen a practice, so I don't want to jump to conclusions. Right. And to be honest, again, just being realistic, the Lions fans that I spoke to did say that Glenn would get stuck in his ways mid-game and would not adjust. Yep. He would stick to his game plan and not come off of it. So again, it's still up in the air as far as what exactly, this team is going to look like. But as far as what we've heard so far, it sounds like Glenn and Muji again kind of have the anti-Saleh approach, where, for example, if Gardner, following the number one wide receiver, comes up in the next press conference, let's just say, yep, I don't think Glenn is going to say, oh, he's not going to do it. That's not our system. I think it's just like, hey, we'll explore it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And we'll move forward from there. I remember like blitzing was like another big thing. Like, oh, well, we just don't blitz, until Ulbrich took over and was like forced to blitz because we weren't getting pressure with our front four. Just like situations like that. And, you were talking about Justin Fields for a sec. It's so funny, dude, because like going back to Ohio State, he wasn't really a runner, like at all. Like, he wasn't like this dual, like, yeah, he can move, but he was like the drop back passer. Yep. Not like to the point of Joe Burrow or, how like people are talking about Shedeur Sanders. Like, he wasn't just like the strict pocket guy, because he always had size on him, but it really wasn't until he got into the NFL, I think it was around that second year, where he really started to just move with just a lot more pace. You saw like that athleticism and just hard to bring down on first contact, guys like slipping off him. He would put moves on guys to make defenders, like grown men, NFL athletes, look stupid. Like, they don't even know how to like try to tackle this guy. So yeah, I think again, from that Jets approach, it's like, or from that Aaron Glenn approach, it's like, hey, if we can get this guy to throw the football effectively and run the ball effectively with Garrett, with Brees, all these different, options, this O-line finally having a left tackle, like this offense could be really scary.
And I just like that. I like that vision where they're going to adjust their schemes and their plans based on the talent on the field. And that was something with Saleh that drove me crazy. Like, come on, man. Like, you've got to make adjustments or use these players in different roles. Like, we would go through matchups each week. Like, this is a week you got to use Conklin. You take advantage of tight end, and they wouldn't do it. And it seems like they're tasked here. He kind of speaks about how Tanner Engstrand does that. His his skill set is taking players, assess their best way to use them against the defense, and go for it and do that. And that's encouraging, man. It's all little things like that. And the one thing I love, which is something that's been lacking in this organization for probably about a decade, is accountability. He's like, listen, we want our receivers to block. If you block, you'll get the rock. That's the way it works. You've got to commit to you got to be a well-rounded player here. You've got to be fully vested in working on this offense, not just be a pass catcher. And that's something that's great too. Now, the thing is, he also spoke about if a young player takes off and is playing well, he's going to play. And it's like everybody's got to earn their playing time. There's no like, all right, you're a veteran, you've been here 5 years, you're going to start, just go sit down and just slack off. No, you're going to earn it. And that's something where I think in this recent couple of years of the Jets, a lot of complacency, a lot of just going through the motions, and they're getting away with it because nobody's holding them accountable. I think those times are changing now. And that's how you build your culture. By listen, all right, this coach is no nonsense. He ain't taking our garbage anymore. We've got to keep doing this. Now, it's good to say it, but now you got to do it. Saleh talked about it in Hard Knocks and didn't do any of it. But I'm hoping Aaron Glenn sticks to his words and actually carries these words out, because this young, impressionable team, you'll get big dividends from that, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you, man. I think it's funny, as you were talking, I was kind of thinking of other instances where the Jets coaching staff in the past maybe felt like, or came across like, we know what we're doing. We're smarter than everyone else.
Yep.
The receiver, and I felt like we heard this over and over and over with different guys, Corley, Xavier Gibson, Denzel Mims. They need to be able to play multiple, like, basically have the same skill set to play, on the outside, on the inside, and they also have to like be able to contribute on special teams. Like that was like a big thing. Like, no, that's just like a mandate here. Like this is a rule. Like receivers have to do this. Another one was like offensive linemen need to be versatile. Like they can't just be, like a hold down one position. But then if you got like a veteran in the mix, right? Morgan Moses, no, he's our right tackle. Tyron Smith, no, he's our left tackle. Why? Well, that's, that's just Tyron Smith. That's just Morgan Moses. But like with Olu, no, it's on the right side. With George Fant, it was left and right. Becton, left and right. Guard, tackle, all these different things, moving the offensive lineman around. So, yeah, going back to kind of what we were talking about before, I like the open-minded approach with Aaron Glenn. It doesn't really it feels like they have a clear-cut board on what they want to see from this Jets team. But, and again, it's early. We have no idea how it's actually going to be executed, but it feels as though, okay, you know what? We have a plan, but we're not going to be set in our ways and super, super stubborn. If someone does take off, if a young player does emerge, like you said, if, someone does maybe go out in training camp and surprise, and we have this guy turning heads in preseason, that guy's going to play. You have to go out and earn your spot. So I like it from that standpoint.
Yeah, I cannot wait till the players are in doing their first, their strength one, like strength conditioning, and hearing them speak to the media and what their early impressions are of the staff. But the one thing I love, again, I just want this huge culture change, which I know you do too. It's like they're not about slogans, all gas, no break, all that nonsense is gone. They're like, we want to work in silence. We're going to work hard. When these guys report to do strength conditioning, we're not talking Super Bowl, we're not talking playoffs, we're talking get in great shape and start learning what's going on around here. And then we progress step by step and figure it out. Like, let's keep everything in perspective and work hard, blue collar mindset, fast, physical, strong, and then we add our pieces to the puzzle. And that's the way to do it. Like, don't sell them nonsense, because they've heard nonsense for 3 years. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, they've got all the fluff, all the sizzle, and no results. So now it's like, this is going to be our way now. And I'm curious to see, especially the leaders, Sauce, Garrett, Quincy, Jamie and Sherwood, how they speak about this staff and their early impressions as they meet the media, because I think you're going to see a tone change here where people were scared there's not going to be a lot of buy-in. I think they're going to get a lot of buy-in based on their approach where they listen, this coach means business and we like it.
Yeah, dude, I think, if you're talking about like NFL athletes, guys that like they compete hard, they work hard, they're naturally super talented, not of course in every single case, but the majority of guys, I would say, like to be pushed.
Yep.
Like in practice, right? In the meeting room, like, hey, why isn't this working out? What can I do to maybe get better? If this coach is telling me something that I haven't heard before, or if a coach is, one thing I've been doing for fun is going back and watching Lions Hard Knocks. A couple years ago, I remember watching it live with my buddy Kyle, who's a diehard Lions fan. And I think it was coming off of the season, off of the horrible season, that first year with Dan Campbell and them. And we were talking about it, like the Lions better not jump the gun and fire him if they start off slow again. Like it really, like they need time to build. But anyway, the reason why I bring it up is because like you're going back and you're watching those episodes, or you're even remembering like just how those coaches handled business, how they spoke to players, never rude, never disrespectful, but damn, they expected a lot. They expected these guys to play hard. They expected guys to go out and win their jobs. One scene kind of stands out, which was the whole linebacker scene with Malcolm, or who is it? Rodriguez, who I believe was undrafted or was a 6th or 7th round draft pick. Made a lot of noise. He was kind of one of like the stars of Hard Knocks. And the linebacker coach at the time was just getting on everybody. Like, hey, I don't care if you're a former 1st round pick and Gerard Davis. Like, we got this young guy here who really wants to be here, and he's outplaying you guys. I don't want to start him, but I'm forced to start him because he's making the plays and you guys aren't. If I could find that, I'll link it down in the chat. But yeah, anyway, I think a lot of that, and granted, it wasn't Aaron Glenn saying that, but I think there's going to be a lot of that kind of former player, hard-nosed, tough, physical. We're going to be tough. Maybe a little bit of that Pete Carroll, like focus on one game at a time, 1-0 every week, not what's the media going to say about us, not what are the expectations, and this press conference is going to be hard because of I'm going to have to answer for signing Brandon Stevens, stuff like that. Like I feel like it's much more, we're going to do us. We have confidence in ourselves. And yeah, we might come across a little bit brash and, not rude isn't the right word, but just like, because I mean, you're watching the Aaron Glenn press conferences. Like at times it's like this guy will snap back at questions and
as he should.
Like that. Yeah. And that's something that I felt like it didn't really happen with Saleh. It didn't really happen with,
they had to though, too. But you had to though, because Saleh got pushed around. He literally did. He was getting pushed around all by the media, and the team became the same way. It became a passive, soft team that was used to losing, used to complain, like used to justifying losing, and walked away like no big deal. Credit to them, they're better than us. Now you have a team like this is how you got to change the mindset here. Like, listen, that's no longer acceptable. Losing is not acceptable here anymore. We're not going to struggle. We're going to struggle. We're not going to accept it. And I think to your point earlier, it's like I train fighters. If they love the fight game, if these guys love to train and you push them, they love to work harder, man. If you have a football team that loves the game of football, it's all about winning and getting the work in, and your coach is pushing you harder, you get big-time results. That's just the way it is. They'll thrive in that environment, man.
Let me ask you, did you fight or do you still currently fight?
Yeah, absolutely. I spar all the time.
So, yeah, from their standpoint, it's like, this guy's living it. Like, he's actually 100%. A part of it. He's not, it's different if, like, you're Andy Reid or something at, however old he is. But I think if you're Sauce Gardner and Aaron Glenn is teaching you up on corner, teaching you up on fundamentals, teaching you up on tackling or shadowing or doing whatever, he's going to listen. He's going to listen, as opposed to, the team that maybe is not demanding as much, or that's putting you kind of on a pedestal because of your recent play, which again is super, super impressive.
Yep.
But yeah, I think again, like, I mean, you hear it all the time, like, oh, the great ones, Tom Brady, all these guys, they love to be pushed. I think the majority of NFL athletes like to be pushed. Not every single player does. Like we've all like kind of been around like former high school players or whatever that will get, feel personally attacked if a coach comes after them or starts yelling or doing whatever. And that's fine. And there's players in the NFL that are like that, kind of in that range as well. But
I think when you have star players, say just for example, I'm not saying it's the case, but if you have a guy like Garrett Wilson who feels like he's not being challenged by his coach or by his team or by his scheme, you don't get the most out of it. You don't like, you buy in because you have to, but you're not really vested. If you know they're going to make a legitimate effort to push you and make you a great player and feature you in the offense, you're going to work harder. If he loves the game of football, like in Sauce Gardner, if you get the attention to detail, like the one thing you heard about him last year was his fundamentals went away, his technique suffered, all that. Nobody was correcting it. If you're on his, just yelling, not yelling him, but coaching him up. But listen, we're going to fix it and be more demanding. Like I'm an old fan, dude. I went to all the Parcells practices. I was there every day, two days they would do it. I would be there all day long just watching him coach because I was fascinated by it to see how he got at it. He'd get after Curtis Martin. He would yell at everybody, do this right. And then all of a sudden, after like 2 weeks of practice, everything's cleaned up. Penalties are going away, a lot more physical, a lot less mistakes. And that's how it trickles down. But it comes to the guys you acquire to put in your locker room. You got to get rid of the malcontents, the bad attitudes, the bad contracts. And that's how you mold it. And when you have a lot of young players like they're bringing in, it's a lot easier because they haven't learned bad habits. They haven't learned bad traits. And what little they had the last couple of years, you can clean that up by hopefully having good leadership in the locker room. You know, your Jamie and Sherwoods, your Quinn and Williams and guys like that.
Yeah, and plus they're handpicked by the new regime. They're not inherited by the new regime. And, you know, it's not like you're just showing up to the draft saying like, oh, this guy looks pretty good. We're going to take him. No, private interviews, combine meetings, you know, going back to like those, like the Pro Bowl game, like Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl, like these coaches, this front office, like they're doing their homework. And I think we're really going to see a similar blueprint on what we saw with the Detroit Lions, which is we're going to draft players that love football. We're going to draft players that really take pride in it, that really want to get better, that aren't, going to shy away from like the physicality. Throw out any line player, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Penei Sewell, Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, Terry and Arnold, like all these different guys. It's like you could Aiden Hutchinson's probably like the headliner of that group, right? It's like they all love football. I think the only one that has been like somewhat questionable has been Jameson Williams. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Lions traded up into the first round to go get Williams. But anyway, I think that's going to be the blueprint of this football team. It's not, let's just chase stars. Let's just chase the big names and worry about the off the field locker room stuff later. I think it's like really building from the ground up, establishing a culture year one and saying, okay, you know what? We got to get guys that fit what we want to do.
Now, the one thing that I want to get your take on, based on the way Aaron Glenn talks about his breakdown of players, like as a former scout and like this very proactive, involved head coach, I think he's going to have a big say in the draft, dude. I really do. I think he's going to have a big say. And I'm curious, they're never going to tell us. Obviously, they don't tell us anything. Like the leaks are gone. But you wonder if there is a close decision to be made, if it's, the room is tied 5-5. 5 guys want this guy, 5 guys want the other guy. Who makes that final decision? Is it Coach Glenn or is it general manager? Dude, I get this weird feeling it may be Aaron Glenn, man. I don't know why I think that, but based on his energy and he basically, I'm not gonna say he hired Muji, but it seems like he came first and the other team, like it's just, you kind of wonder what the power structure is and that crucial decision. But I think they're both on the same page. But who do you think makes that decision there?
Glenn.
I think so too.
I mean, bro, he was hired first. And if we think back to, I think it was Woody Johnson actually in the press conference. But anyway, the Jets interviewed, I think, 16 different coaches and 15 GMs, if I'm not mistaken. So we had 30 candidates total, over 30, 31. Aaron Glenn, the remark was made somewhere that we got the top guy. We interviewed Aaron Glenn, obviously did really, really well. Second interview came in. This is the guy that we want. And they made it happen. And they're like, you don't go out and hire a head coach if you're like lukewarm on.
Yeah. Especially
when the Jets are talking to freaking everyone. Matt Nagy, Arthur Smith, all these different guys. And by the way, Aaron Glenn was the top or one of the top coaching candidates on the market for the last couple of seasons. I mean, talk about all the head coaching interviews, Denver throughout the years, right? Washington last year, he was a finalist for Washington.
The Saints.
Yeah, the New Orleans Saints, right? That was the big one, or the big kind of competitor with the Jets this past season. But I mean, he interviewed with Chicago and who was the Raiders too.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was also some interest in Jacksonville. But anyway, the Jets were like, in my impression of it is we are going to hire this guy right now with Tannenbaum, former GM, Spielman, former GM, making the call, running the search. That speaks volumes. I don't see someone, and you also kind of felt like Lance Newmark was like going to be the general manager because he was brought in with Glenn. He was at the building and it like fell through. The whole situation was weird, but with Darren Muji coming in, I don't see a situation where Muji's saying, no, Glenn, you listen to us now. Even though you kind of brought me in, or like, I was brought in secondly, and who knows, maybe Glenn will maybe give the benefit of the doubt to Muji. I mean, I could see some
Right.
You know,
Could give you
I mean,
big.
bottom line is first round, you're getting a good player, top
Yeah.
10, right? So the front office is going to have a solid argument to maybe take a player in this hypothetical. One question I wanted to run by you though, right?
Uh-oh.
Because of the recent comments where we don't necessarily have the locked in system and maybe that points to best player available, and we don't know how Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn like to operate as far as the scouting, player acquisition, what are internally our core beliefs. Of course, physical love football, right? The stuff that we were talking about.
Yep.
But, what exactly, when it comes to prospects and like coming up with your big board, what is the deciding factor? Like how important is like wingspan for a corner or wingspan for a wide receiver? How important is explosive numbers for like a defensive end? So because we don't have those answers, and because again, it seems like the Jets are kind of leaving it open and not like this is our system and we could only are going to draft for like fit our system. Could you see maybe like a wild card, massive curveball on draft night where it's like the Jets maybe internally, because again, we don't have this information. What if internally, like they love combine numbers, they love athleticism, and they go with like Shamar Stewart at spot number 7 and just shock everyone because he's put up like similar athletic numbers to like a Myles Garrett. He's very comparable in that regard. Like, yeah, that's something that I don't see. But after the comments today, I'm not gonna put anything by this team and just say like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna assume that, because I was one of the guys that I assumed that Justin Fields was not going to sign with the Jets, partly because I thought he was going to be back with Pittsburgh, but I also felt like on the open market, the Jets would want maybe that quick decision maker in the drop back pass game, and Fields hasn't really been that quick, decisive guy. And they signed him on day one. So I'm not going to sit here and just assume anything.
Yeah, I mean, I like that Rick Spielin's in the building. Like he could be a mediator and kind of help them gather their thoughts and keep them organized. But based on their comments over the last 2 days, I was like, wait a minute, things are a little different here. Like we're kind of assuming one thing, and they have a much broader perspective on it, where they're like, listen, they may go best player available at they think is their best player on their rankings, on their scale. Loves the game of football, all that, and then you look at who's becoming available, and you got me like 2 weeks ago. You were right, and I'm going to tell you you're right, because you're like, oh, Cleveland Browns, they may not go Shador. They may have Kirk Cousins. And I'm like, that's not going to happen. They didn't cut him. But then Kirk Cousins said, you know what? I'm not going to do my no trade clause until after the draft because I want to know where I'm going to go and not get screwed over again like the Falcons did. So you could see Kirk Cousins going to the Browns, dude. You could literally see it. I 100% see that happen, dude. So if that happens, right, and they kind of know that, because Myles Garrett kind of hinted like, you know what? I knew who my quarterback's going to be. That's why he stayed there. I mean, no disrespect to Shador Sanders, but I think it's probably a much bigger fish, like a much bigger player. If that's actually their vision and the Browns don't take Shador, things get really interesting, man.
See, bro, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I feel more like I'm not going to rule out Sanders to the Browns. I feel like Sanders to the Browns makes a ton of sense.
I don't think they do it.
You don't think so?
I for some reason, I just don't see it. I don't know why. I have this feeling that they're going to, because there's always like, we always assume we know like the first 10 picks or the first 5 picks. Oh, it's slam dunk. And there's always a curveball where like, didn't see that coming. And I think the Shador thing is going to be interesting, man, because I don't think the Browns do it. I think they have a vision for somebody else. And maybe they take what? Do they take Abdul Carter? Like, who do they take? I don't know, man. But it just seems like it's interesting, man. I'm not so sure. So we can assume Cam Ward's number 1. The Titans are going to keep it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go, so just say you go Cam Ward, Sanders, 1, 2. The Giants are going to do what? Hunter?
I would say Hunter. Yeah.
Okay.
Because pass rusher, they have Brian Burns on a big deal. Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence in the middle of the defensive line. I know it's a different position, but still, it's a ton of money owed to a defensive lineman. How much do you want to invest in one unit? So I think Hunter.
I mean, Neighbors and Hunter would be interesting, depending on where Hunter plays. Now, what happens at 4?
Carter. If this is the scenario, Carter is going to New England easily.
Okay. I think so too. Now, what about 5? Because 5, I think, could be a curveball for everybody. What do you think of 5?
Yeah, 5. It's like they're having the same conversation. I bet you Jags fans are having the same conversation.
100%.
Gladstone, Cohen was hired first, but they had the working relationship back with the Rams. I think we see Mason Graham get mocked to the Jags a lot because it's like a high floor type of player, position of need. And, are the Jags really going to take like a receiver at spot number 5? I mean, they could.
Probably won't.
You can argue like Tyler Warren, but like the Rams never really like sold out and went all in with the tight end position. Liam Cohen didn't really put the big emphasis on the tight end position in Tampa. I mean, maybe we don't know how they view Tyler Warren. But I would say at this point, it's probably just, Mason Graham.
Yeah, because I think Tyler Warren gets interesting there. I'm like, I wonder if he goes higher than we expect. We're all assuming, like, you know what, they have a decision to make. He may not even be available. But now, do you see a scenario where Membo would be gone before the Jets get the chance at 7, or no?
I think he could. I think he could be in play for both New England if they view him as someone who can move over to the left side.
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, Moses is the team's right tackle.
Yeah.
But I think if Carter's on the board, it's take BPA, elite pass rusher, great fit in the variable defense. And the draft isn't over in 1 round. You can go out and get a starting left tackle in round 2. Josh Connerly from Oregon, Ursary from Minnesota, someone like that. And New England also has that high 2nd round pick. But yeah, Carter 4 to New England, Graham 5. But I also could maybe see Membu at spot number 5 as well, because it's like, again, first of all, Liam Cohen's coming from Tampa, great top 5 offensive line in football. The Jaguars have pieces, but they don't have a top 5 unit. And Membu is the most athletic offensive lineman in this class. And they didn't have the best production at right tackle last season. The curveball is that player was a former 1st round pick. So do you want to necessarily like relegate him to the bench after a couple years, 2 years? Do you want to maybe kick him inside the guard? And that's like, you're looking at free agency. They signed Makari from Baltimore. So, he's not going to leave Baltimore to go be a backup for Jacksonville on a multi-year deal. So, but then again, you can push back and say, well, the team didn't draft Anton Harrison. So I wouldn't be surprised if Membu goes 5 to Jacksonville. So
what do you think the chances are of both Membu and Warren being available at 7? I had this funny feeling one of them was going to be gone. I don't think it'll be both, but I think one will be gone. So which one do you think would be the higher chance of being gone before 7?
Well, I think Genty is probably going to go 6 to the Raiders, which is just kind of, I feel like, common knowledge at this point. Just win now team, win now player, position of need, helps out Geno, and also takes pressure off of Bowers. But I would say Warren is more likely going to be on the board. But I do feel like they're, both realistic.
So just say in a world that Membu is gone, is Warren your slam dunk pick then?
Well, if Warren's gone, that means someone else is on the board that we're not talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's gonna be true too. It could be Sanders, or it could be Graham.
Yeah, if that's the case, dude. See, I really like a lot of the D tackles in this class. I prefer like the D tackle class over the tight end class. So I think I would just take Tyler Warren at 7 and then worry about D tackle later. Because if you could get Tyleik Williams from Ohio State,
and you love him. Yep.
Yeah.
In the second round though, right?
Yeah, 2nd round. But he could be a late 1st. I mean, like, this draft is so weird. Like, we don't know exactly how it's going to go. Because like a lot of these players are like graded the same way. So like end of round 1 through like mid round 2, they're all like the same players. So we could see guys like we could see guys like getting drafted to Buffalo that we're looking at a mock draft and that player's going 50 or 60 to another team. And it would look like a massive reach, but in reality, like all these guys are kind of graded in the same way. So like the 2nd and the 3rd round this year are like, it's deep. Like you can get some starters in the 2nd and 3rd rounds. And then there's a bit of a drop off, but the kind of counter is in the 1st round, you got about like 15 to 19, 20-ish, like guys with actual 1st round grades. Yeah. So if you're sitting there at like 23, 28, basically like 21, 22 and on, it's like you're looking at a bunch of 2nd rounders, which is fine. It is what it is. 2nd rounders are still like projected to be starters, but the chances of you getting like a Justin Jefferson, he was like a late round pick, late round 1 pick, I would say are very slim to draft a superstar. I think this is a good class to really like fill in the cracks of your roster.
Yeah, again, I interviewed Dom. He does Talking Jets Draft on Sunday, and he was like, you know what? The trade back scenario actually comes in the second round, where you can get more creative trading back in the second round, maneuvering around a lot more there instead of first round trades. Like if Muji wanted to get clever and you can move around and get good value, still get quality players and add more picks by trading down the second round, which is interesting because you kind of said like deep tackle class, tight end class. I think overall isn't terrible. You still get good value there. So it's interesting to take that approach.
Yeah, and I do think so. I like that approach, but I think with the Jets, it is important to not necessarily maximize what you have, but I don't want I don't want the Jets to necessarily be in a position where we're trading back a ton or we move back 20 spots. And yeah, we're going to go out and get a starter, but we missed out on the 6 guys that we felt comfortable with because we jumped so far back.
Yeah, too cute.
Yeah, and if the Jets stand pat 7 and 42 and 73. Those are 3 starters to me. However you want to shake it up. So wide receiver, tight end, right tackle, D tackle, tight end, wide receiver, like strong safety you can throw into the mix. 3 starters, in my opinion, no matter what position you want to go with.
So now this is where I struggle because I know enough about the draft to be dangerous, but I don't know how to tier players. So the drop off from, say, Tyler Warren to what you can get in the second round, is it significant enough to be like, you know what, I don't want to take that chance, as opposed to, say, a Mason Graham to the second round? Like, what's your, you know what I mean? Like, it's like I try to anticipate, like, are you getting the best player at the position? Yes, but can I still get very good value later where the other player I could take, the drop off is significantly more? Like, it's, wow, that's really the drop off. I'm not getting that same kind of quality. Like, how do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like, well, the first thing I'd say is it's not a perfect science, right? There were receivers taken ahead of Justin Jefferson.
Yep.
Looking back, that's ridiculous. Who was the other one? I think it was Jalen Reagor that was taken ahead of Justin Jefferson, something like that. So no team has all the answers. But I think one thing that's really important to talk about is, like, if you're looking at it like the draft and you're just like tunnel vision, like, okay, this draft class and these draft picks, what's the drop off between like Tyler Warren, Loveland, and like Fannin from Bowling Green or Arroyo from Miami. Like, and you're trying to like analyze that drop off. But then, like, I think that's one way to look at it. But I think another way to look at it too is like, what's the drop off between, like, looking at the ceilings and the floors of players. So if you think Tyler Warren can be a top 5 tight end in football, right? We're talking Travis Kelce, Kittle, Bowers, someone like that, like actually strikes fear into defensive coordinators in whatever role you want to put them in, right? That's what we think Warren is going to be. And like, as a front office, as a general manager, like, you have to have confidence in like your belief system with, like, Bougie got the job for a reason, right? All these GMs are sitting in their seat for a reason. So you're looking at a player like that, like, okay, Tyler Warren, what's his position? Tight end. So if we maybe view Fannin as a guy who, he could be a top 15 receiving tight end, not really that fast. Maybe there's some more questions to his game. Like, you're kind of not necessarily making direct pro comparisons to the individual players, but it's like, okay, if we view Tyler Warren top 5 tight end, what is a top 5 tight end? Someone who's contributing, like a Kittle, a Kelce, a Bowers. Throw Kincaid and Hawkinson into that mix as well, compared to Conklin, like a middle of the road tight end. And it's like, we just saw Conklin go for $3 million. And again, it's not a perfect science. Who knows? Maybe Fannin has a better career than Tyler Warren. Like,
so you're about the ceiling then. Like, what's the potential ceiling of the player is how you kind of differentiate. Like, all right, listen, we can have a top 5 guy, but if we do settle for less, it's maybe a mid-tier guy that's not going to be a huge contributor on offense, more of like
Right. I would say, like, it's a look at the ceiling and the floor. First of all, what's the player now and what's the position that he plays?
Right.
And then how good do we think this player can be in like our system, working with our guys and our coaches? What's like the belief level in our coaches to, get him going, like continue to grow, but also like, what's his floor? Because the floor thing is huge as well. Like, for example, if you hit on Shamar Stewart and he gives you 9 sacks next year, you're going to be like, as a general manager, you're going to be like, dude, this guy's a beast. Like he took a swing on this athletic guy with no production, and he's proven everyone wrong because, Shamar Stewart's like that guy. So the floor, but if you miss, it's like, well, the answers were right in front of you. Like he had no production back in college, kind of faded late into the season every single year. What do you do? Like, so basically it has to, your general manager has to analyze both situations and then throw on top of it the scheme fit and then off the field, all these different things. But
so then the next question is, I agree with you, by the way. I clearly, the assessment is perfect. Now, how do you prioritize position then? You say, listen, we think that Warren could be a top 5 tight end, but we think Ted McMillan could be a top 5 wide receiver. What's more important to you? I'm not saying that now, but I'm just saying in your theory of how you evaluate position. Or Mason Graham sitting there staring in your face. Okay, him or Membu or Warren, they're all available to you. How do you assess the position? Like, what's more important to you, a defensive tackle or a tight end? Right tackle or tight end? Like, how do you prioritize that then?
Yeah, I think at that point it comes down to a couple things. Number one, the scheme. So like maybe Cliff Kingsbury views tight ends very, very highly. We saw McBride get drafted to Arizona, what he's doing now. We're seeing, God, what Zach Ertz is still being able to do. So like that's a coach, that's a system that really is just like, hey, tight end, like we really need someone who's dynamic in this area compared to, a team out there that doesn't really, look at the tight end position as like a major threat. In a perfect world, everyone's just like, yeah, I want A+ at every position, but it's just not realistic. And if you start comparing the other positions, and once you have scheme out of the way, like, okay, I mean, we heard this argument all the time with Saleh, right? We knew edge rushers were the most important in this style of system because they don't blitz and they need to affect the quarterback with their front four. Yep. And if you're not sending extra guys and your front four aren't getting to the quarterback, well, the quarterback's going to sit there and throw, pick you apart. And we also heard that safeties aren't important because of all the guys dropping back in coverage, right? The cover 3, cover 4.
Yep.
So it's just like, okay, we can just get an athlete and put him back there. That's an over exaggeration, but it's kind of the thinking, like why go out and pay $15 million for a safety when he's covering, the middle portion of the field, stuff like that. So the scheme is one side of it, but I think also the other is the impact of the position. So for example, if you think Membu could be a top 15 right tackle and you compare that to Tyler Warren, who you think is going to be a top 5 tight end, it's because, again, you're trying to look at ceilings, you're trying to look at floors. What's more valuable? The 14th ranked right tackle in football or the 4th ranked tight end in the game? So then, again, you're factoring in scheme, you're factoring in, what, like the environment around that player, coaching input. Do we feel like he's maybe reached his ceiling? Do we feel like we can get the most out of him? Is he coachable? Do you also assess the state of your offense as a whole, where you can make an argument that while it may be, say he's only the 5th tight end, right? Whatever. But you also have an enormous hole on the offense as you need playmakers, where you only have Garrett Wilson. So say if you have your normal team where you have, say, 2 legit receivers you feel comfortable with and all the other playmakers, like, all right, we can avoid Tyler Warren now. It's not, it's fine. But based on their lack of playmakers, is it a bigger priority to get a guy like that? Or do you say, no, don't worry about that. We can add a wide receiver round 2. We'll still find our playmakers later on, or maybe in free agency in June. Like, is that a factor at all or no? Yeah, I mean, I think it's more so like that would be a question for Muji and Glenn, because it's like, we don't know how they, first of all, we don't know how they like to operate. We don't know, maybe Darren Muji is going to be the most active general manager when it comes to draft day trades. We don't know that. Maybe he's a guy that's completely against it.
Yeah.
Who the hell knows? But I think at that point, you're starting to look at the rest of the class. Like one thing I like to do is like 2-round mock drafts, because it's, when you're only doing the 1 round, it's like, God, New England needs a left tackle. So we got to go out and get that left tackle. Yeah. It's like the only option. And it's like, okay, well, if you open it up to 2 rounds or 3 rounds, it's like, whoa, there's some good left tackles here in round 2, top of round 2. And that's the reality, right? You have 7 rounds to make stuff happen, trades, standing pat, whatever. So maybe the Jets, I mean, it's a bad example because it didn't work out in the Jets' favor, but Joe Douglas had Malachi Corley as the 4th ranked wide receiver over Brian Thomas last year, over Keon Coleman, over Xavier Worthy, over all these different guys, right? A.D. Mitchell from Texas. And Corley caught under 10 passes, I believe.
He barely even played. He couldn't get on the
Brian
field.
Thomas
He
was
couldn't.
like a freaking dominant wide receiver 1, and he was selected in the bottom of round 1. So the evaluation process is such a big deal into it,
Yeah.
because if that's flawed, then
Well,
now it's just a roll of the dice.
It's also how you map out your draft too, where you have a vision, like the foresight to say, listen, we're going to go this route in round 1. We've got to address these needs before round 5. Like you kind of vision like who will still be available, who won't be available. Now, DK's got a really good point too. He's like, year 1 is either the best or worst time to pull a Trayvon Walker situation. Now, in terms of taking a risky pick in the first 2 rounds, again.
Can I cut in real quick?
Good.
So we saw that with Becton and Joe Douglas passing on Wirfs.
Yep.
Going for the high upside.
That's where I was going to go with this.
Physical. Yep. Oh, sorry to cut you off.
No, that's exactly what I thought. That exactly. We were all like, "Oh, Wirfs is the answer." Like it was the no-brainer for me. I'm like, "This is perfect." And you're like, "Wait a minute." They're like, "All right, I get it." Now, do you think that Muji and Glenn are in the position to take that risky, questionable pick in year 1 of their regime? Like, all right, we're rebuilding, we're taking a shot, like, or is it you need more of the? There is no slam dunk. I understand that, but the safer pick, the better quality pick with less risk associated to it. Do you think what situation are they in right now?
It's a good question. Are you talking like for every pick in the draft, or
especially the first like 2 rounds? Yeah. Because keep in mind, we both said we want to get 3 starters in the first 3 rounds, or 3 contributors that have to have an impact this year because of the holes on the roster. If that's the case, do you take any risk? Do you get a little aggressive and maybe, go a different direction?
Well, just disclosure. I'm not taking a quarterback. First 3 rounds, no QB for me. Jackson Dart on the board in round 2, not taking him.
Me neither.
I'm just, it just feels pointless to me. Again, 3 starters, however you want to shake it up. I think personally, like if I was an NFL GM, I value the floor in players. Like I really like to have that, and no one, again, it's not a perfect science, but understanding like the floor of a player, like at the worst, throwing injuries aside for a second, just as a player, he's playing at the worst. What is he going to be? If that guy is still giving me 6 sacks at the worst, not factoring in him getting better with coaches, not factoring in, maybe him continuing to grow physically as a player, getting stronger, working with like an NFL strength program. Maybe you can pair him with a veteran and that veteran's teaching him moves like Tyron Smith to Olu, stuff like that. Right. Like at his worst, if you were to line up today and he can give you like 4-6 sacks, it's like, okay, we have our baseline.
Yeah.
Now, how realistic is it that he's going to get better from that floor? Because I think if you build a roster with guys with, high floors, it's very difficult to pick holes or putting yourself in the shoes of like the opposition, looking at your team, like, where's your weakness? Where's the Buffalo Bills' weakness?
Right. Well, that's where Joe Douglas struggled.
The Buffalo Bills stars, you get Josh Allen and.
Well, that's why you can't have like a top heavy roster where it's like talent laid up top and the middle and bottom is depleted, where you have no contributors and you're always chasing free agents to make up for it. If you have those mid tier guys that are consistent, solid players, special teams guys, and there's not, it's like that's how you have your roster, and when you can handle adversity with injuries and everything else. That's the most important part.
Yeah, and and we've all, and like the counter to it is like, even like for example, like I prefer the high floor types of players.
Yeah,
because I think if you build out a roster with a guy, with a bunch of players that you feel like we know what they could be at their worst, and now put these players in an environment where we know that they can get better, we know that they can fit. Worst case scenario, we're still going to have a decent roster, with not a lot of holes. But then, like, you have, I'm trying to think of a code, like for example, like Seattle with Pete Carroll, they would take the swings on the athletic guys, the high ceilings, low floors, where they're either working out, Earl Thomas, Cam Chancellor, guys like that, high ceilings. Rashad Penny was one of those guys, like high ceiling running back, first round pick, doesn't even, doesn't really pan out.
Yeah.
So, it goes both ways. There's no perfect way to do it, but that's my preferred route. I like to go with the high floor the good news for the Jets, I think at 7, you're going to get a high floor, high ceiling player. It's just the reality. You have a top 10 pick.
So we'll do this every week. April 1st, we're getting closer to the draft. Has your opinion at number 7 changed? Are you changing what you want? Like, who do you still want?
So I think really for me, it comes down to Membu at 7 or Tyler Warren at 7. You know, you can, like, I've seen like, curveball, like, oh, well, if Will Campbell's there, personally, I just don't really view him as a right tackle for as an NFL team.
He's more of a guard.
I think so, more of a guard, yeah, because of the wingspan and whatnot. And, he was someone who, like, I felt like if you take we talk about with like the quarterbacks all the time, but if you take Will Campbell and you put him in last year's class, it would have been like, okay, he's like a for sure guard. And, I don't think he would be considered within the top 15 picks based off of last season's class. Now you can say, okay, that's irrelevant. He's not in last year's class. Who even cares? You got to take the players that's, available this year.
Right.
But like, for example, like if I'm New England, I'm not taking Will Campbell and reaching for a left tackle at 4. I'm going to go with the best player. Now, if Carter and Hunter are off the board, let me throw this by you. Right. Do you think Mike Vrabel, someone who's worked pretty heavily with a great running back in Derrick Henry, do you think they could go Ashton Genty at 4?
That would be bold. They're trying to stock up as much talent as possible behind Drake May. They're trying to build up an offense there. I mean, it wouldn't be. See, like, that's the thing. I think based on his resume, the team they have, they can take that chance because they have pieces in place. They feel comfortable about a lot of things where I don't think the Jets can take that chance. But I think the Patriots could do that. Absolutely could do that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think right now, if the draft is tonight and the Jets are picking in 5 minutes, I think I would go Membu at 7 and just say, you know what? And it's not like, oh, Membu, throw Tyler Warren, throw Warren away, whatever, he's useless. No, not at all. It's like 51-49 for me. But I do think there's something. The thing that fires me up the most is the fact that Olu and Membu are both extremely athletic, extremely talented in pass pro, and one is 22 and one is young. 20. So, bro, we could be doing this podcast 10 years from now. There could be flying cars, and they will still be our starting tackles. Like, that's like, as a Jets fan, like, we haven't had like 2 bookend tackles in such a long time for just year after year, no questions asked, assuming Membu works out. And again, not even going to factor in the injuries or anything like that. But one thing too, I wanted to get your thoughts on real quick before we end. I know we're over an hour, but in regards to Membu, it's not a do or die season for the Jets, right?
Nope.
Super Bowl expectations. We know Muji and Glenn long contracts are going to be here for a while. What's the O-line? If we take Tyler Warren, right, at 7, and we don't address O-line in the first 3 picks, because who knows? That's the risk you take. What happens if another team is thinking the same exact thing with a different position? New England, right? Yeah. They want to go BPA and they want to go tackle later. That's the risk you take with trying to wait and outsmart everyone. If no players are there that you like, if the tackles are gone, now you're like, great, we don't have. Yeah. Now we have to look to the late rounds and then put that player in a bad position to start, especially if he's not ready because of just our poor management. But if the Jets go Tyler Warren at 7, great pick, right? A pick, and we address other positions of need in round 2, round 3, maybe D tackle and a safety or whatever,
wide receiver,
yeah. What is our offensive line going to look like after the year?
Well, good question. You got to hope maybe you get a developmental guy later on in the draft. You have 2 guys.
We already have 2 developmental guys in Max Mitchell and Carter Warren.
Why are you killing my dreams? Why are you killing my dreams, man? But no, what you do is you have your open competition. You say you have the veteran they signed. Oh, I always say his name wrong. You have him. You have Carter Mitchell. You have Max Mitchell. You have Carter Warren. All compete. Go to training camp, see what happens, and say, okay, listen, not going to work out. Go pick somebody that gets cut. Keep finding veteran options, but also hoping that the tight end's going to help too with blocking. There's ways you can kind of hide a weak tackle, so it's not the best case scenario. Like in my world, I'm taking 3 offensive players. tight end, wide receiver, tackle in the first 3 rounds. I don't care how you do it, but that's how I would do it. Like I wouldn't wait. Like, I want because if you could have like see, and what you said was right. Like if you could have Membu, Tippmann, and Olu for the next decade playing together, that's perfect. That's 3. It's 3 first-year line, young offensive players that are like working together. It's a perfect scenario.
Yeah, because the way I'm kind of thinking of it is, I'm talking after this year.
Yep.
Where John Simpson's contract's up.
Yep.
ABT's contract is up. And Tippmann's approaching the end of his rookie deal. And this is the scenario where we don't get Membu. So now we need bad left guard, right guard. Tippmann extensions are, the contract extension for Joe is going to be talked about, assuming he plays well. And we're still going to have to find that right tackle. And so we're kind of right back to the Joe Douglas era where it's like we're hitting the offseason. It's like, great, we need 3 starters and 1 or 2 backups figured out in one offseason.
I get it.
So it's just an interesting kind of maybe like experiment to kind of put yourself in, because Muji's not just drafting for this year. He's probably thinking like down the road too.
You're also drafting for Justin Fields or your quarterback, whether it's Justin Fields or a young quarterback next year. You want them to be protected. You want to be able to have a foundation to run the ball, protect the quarterback, and make plays. And that's the offensive line. It's been a priority forever. And I get it. Like, I understand it's tough, man. Like, because there's so many if-thens. Like, I like Tyler Warren a lot. I can see how he could make a huge impact. But, right tackle is a concern. So it's a real fine line to see how they approach it. And then wide receiver is a complete ghost town. We have no idea what we have there. I know they signed Josh Reynolds, which is nice. They have Lazard. He's probably getting cut at the June. Malachi Corley's an unknown. So it's you're convincing people over here. Look, Larry's convinced now.
Yeah. But I mean, you see what it's saying. Like you see, like, basically the point is 2026 rolls around. However the Jets perform, whatever. Like, and you could always argue, okay, we could bring back Simpson and we can bring back ABT. But if you start doing that and you're assuming that these guys are worth bringing back, that means that they're probably playing pretty well. So you have to give them decent sized deals. And we don't take Membu. We need left guard, right tackle, center contract extension. And we're not talking about any of the other positions like, you just brought up with receiver and stuff like that. And I just don't want to see the Jets in a position in 2026 where we are looking back a year ago saying, man, we had 4/5 of the O-line figured out. All we needed to do was draft, one more guy and we could have had like a solid unit. But now it's like, okay, we need 3 starters again. And great, we're paying Aaron Rodgers freaking $30 million. That could have gone to a tackle. That could have gone to really invest in the O-line. So yeah, and who knows? Maybe Membu is a bust. Maybe he doesn't work out. That's always a scenario too. So what's the floor with Tyler Warren? Do you think at the worst Tyler Warren's like the 8th best tight end in football? If you feel like Membu has a low floor and you think he could maybe be out of the league in 5 years, like worst case scenario, maybe that kind of pushes the needle more so to Warren. So a ton of different things, but I think, that's we're obviously like really diving into like the details with it. But just kind of taking a step back and just, Jets can go after a right tackle. Jets can go after a tight end. It's a win. It's an A pick either way.
Yeah, they need contributors. Like offense is my priority. I keep telling you that because it's just driving me crazy. And I want to see Fields succeed, man. I just don't want to see them, dropping back the pass. Nobody's open. He's running for his life, getting killed. Like you want to see, Garrett Wilson flourish. The only way he's going to do that if he has help. He's got to have somebody on the opposite side or in the middle to take defense away from him a little bit. So there's a lot of tough decisions. Like, it's tough, man. And you can make arguments, like clear, concise arguments for both sides and be okay with it. Like, I wouldn't hate either pick. It's like, okay, you take Tyler Warren. How are you going to address right tackle later on in the draft? You take Membu. Okay, how you get me a playmaker, either wide receiver, tight end. It's legitimate though, not a project. A guy can contribute this year because we need that. It's like you got to see, like you said, it's really smart doing a 2-round, 3-round mock draft and say, okay, listen, we took this. What's available later on to help us address it? So we kind of feel better about it.
Yeah, dude. Reality is there's a lot of team. Like the Jets are going from 7 to 42. That's over 30 picks. There's teams that need receivers. There's teams that need tight ends. There's teams that need D tackles and right tackles. Like they're going to be, it's not a guarantee that we can just go. Cause like, I'll see it all the time, right? Go with whatever, Membu or Warren at 7 and then come back and go. Like, I feel like the names that everyone throws out, like it's funny because I'll try to watch, like a lot of draft content, and the one name at receiver that always gets talked about is Higgins from Iowa State. Just draft Higgins and from Iowa State in round 2. But then you got like 10 fan bases saying that exact same thing.
100%.
Like, hey, he's only going to one place. We're like, oh yeah, just take Arroyo or Fannin in round 2. He's gonna be there. But then like you got like 8 different fan bases saying the same thing.
Yep.
But that's the game that general managers play. And some like you don't want to be on like the losing end of a gamble because they're talking to the owner. It's being talked about like, okay, well, if we pass on Warren, we still really need a tight end here. Yeah. And we're all kind of nervously hoping that one falls to us at 42, because if that guy's not, what if there's a run on tight ends?
That's what I was
going to say. Around 2. Yeah. And then you're like looking around the room and Woody Johnson's like, it's year 1. And you told me that there was going to be a tight end in round 2.
Yep. And
they're not here now. So now what do we do? You know what I mean?
You want to be ahead of the run, not after the run. Like you want to start the run, not be like reacting to it. Like, oh my God, now's a run. We're getting caught like blindsided by this. And that's happened to Joe Douglas before. And you're like, oh, like it's just so frustrating to see. So but that's how you map. You got to map out your draft board. You have to have, that's your scouting. That's your blueprint. And then you like Aaron Glenn said one thing where it's like, when you have your players you covet, like you make sure you make a priority to get those kind of players. And I'm curious if that means they'll be more aggressive. They say, listen, we say, Tyler Warren's your guy and they want somebody else, like they're going to maybe move up to get these guys. So I don't know. There's so many if-thens with this team right now and not knowing what their blueprint is of drafting because they've never done it before for the Jets. So it's crazy, man.
Yeah. And I will say though, that the Jets are like, they're in a good spot because it's like, we really need right tackle. And there's probably going to be one available at spot number 7. And if we miss out, there's 2 to 3 to 4 options that could be there in round 2. It's not like, because there's some positions out there, maybe like wide receiver, where like you got like Matt Golden, Ted McMillan, Travis Hunter, but he's going to go early. Yeah. You got a handful of guys, but if you miss out on them, then you got to look to round 2. So if you're a bottom round 1 team that needs like a wide receiver, like, do you reach and go with them early because okay, New England, maybe Tennessee, Arizona, the Jets, Raiders, maybe Jaguars, maybe like there could be a run on receivers, and that receiver might not get to spot number 2 or to your pick in round number 2. Yeah. But anyway, the point is the Jets need a right tackle bad, and there's one that could realistically be there. The Jets also really needed a tight end
bad,
and there's one that's pretty damn good, and he's probably going to be there at 7. So in the case that they're both not there, then you know what? We have a really, really, really good player dropping to us. Like I don't see Travis Hunter getting to us or something like that. I guess maybe the worst case scenario is if Graham goes 5 to Jacksonville. Let's see. Okay, so we'll go. Sanders is on the board. Oh, Genty's on the board. So, okay, we'll map it out like that. This is, I guess, maybe worst case scenario for the Jets, right? Ward 1 to Tennessee.
Okay.
Cleveland goes Carter.
Okay.
Giants go Travis Hunter. They pass and they're fine with Russ. New England goes Tyler Warren with Josh McDaniels, maybe, the Gronk comparison, or they go Membu. They think he could be the team's starting left tackle. Jacksonville scoops the other one, Tyler Warren or Membu. Then you got 6. They don't go I don't know. I think worst case, Membu and Warren are off the board for the Jets, but I don't think that's going to happen.
See, in that case, I would see Sanders going to Pete Carroll.
I mean, you could argue Mason Graham goes to Vegas.
Goes to the Jets then. He'd go to the Jets then.
Sanders?
No, basically. See, I would think if the Raiders get a chance to get Shedeur, I think they take him, dude. I really do.
So you think Sanders' floor is 6?
Mm-hmm. He's born to be a Raider. He would love it there. Dion would love it there. They'd all love it there. He has that Raider. He'd be a perfect fit there, man. They can market him. He could learn behind Geno because Geno's contract's not done yet either. I don't think, right? The extension.
No, so the extension's not done, but we've also heard Brady like really talk about like stashing a quarterback.
There's that there. And the Falcons did it with Penix, so it happens, and that's like a guy. It seems like it's tailor made. Then the Jets, see if the Jets get Graham, then it's just like, because then you're like, all my concerns are all out there because then it's like you want wide receiver, you want tackle, you want tight end, and now you're pushing that all back around unless you get aggressive or maybe make a trade for like Goddard or Mayer. I don't know, but it's now. What is your like if you had to rank priorities in terms of the draft? We're going really long. I'm sorry, but if we had to rank priorities like offensive line, right tackle, wide receiver, how would you rank those three in terms of your desperate need?
Yeah, dude. I mean, it really just comes down to like what you value because like you don't want to be like it's really just pick your poison. That's what it comes down to.
Well, you're Muji. How do you say what is your team's biggest needs on offense? Rank them.
Well, if I don't have the scheme, I don't know exactly like what like for so
Like
okay.
a
So for example, like what?
You're like a politician.
Well, no, I mean, because it's like, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we need a tight end. Tight end's the number one need if Tanner Engstrand wants to get wide receivers the ball more.
That's true.
You know what I mean? So, but then you have the defensive mind, Aaron Glenn, who is coming in from Detroit, and they really invested in building out the D line. And I know I'm going to be pissed next season if we're losing games. Fields is looking good. He has protection. Team is scoring points. And yet we're at, we're giving up 5 yards,
Yeah, but
we can't stop the run.
But let's also not forget, they have a lot of money invested in that D-line too. Jermaine Johnson, high pick. Will McDonald, high pick. Quentin Williams making a lot of money. Quincy Williams, quality player. Jamie Sherwood's making a lot of money. Sauce is a top pick. Michael Carter II getting paid a lot of money. Stevens is getting paid a lot of money. You have a lot of money invested in defense where it's like, all right, is that same kind of money being invested on offense right now? Like it's more, to me, it's like you should have enough pieces on defense now to be serviceable where the offense to me is a bigger priority.
Well, I think you can say, okay, well, a majority of those defensive players were here last year and we couldn't stop the run.
Well, could be coaching.
Yeah, I mean, it could be coaching. And who knows? Maybe Derek Nottie, who we brought in from the Chiefs, is like a freaking animal.
Or
and we all don't have that need, So, I mean, I would say the biggest need right now, in my opinion, like if I'm just doing fantasy draft, I can take any player, in the league. I want an explosive weapon on offense that takes pressure off the run game, that takes pressure off of Garrett.
Yep.
I think right tackle, obviously it's such a huge need for this team. And of course, again, we're projecting out and everything like that. But I think if you take a look at the majority of NFL teams, it's rare to say, oh, we have a really good left tackle and a left guard and a center and a left guard and a right guard and a right tackle. And we're great everywhere. Bucks,
but it's just
Eagles.
But you also look at the blueprint of teams that have been winning. Though, look at the Eagles. Like you look at all like the Detroit Lions. All about the line play. It's kind of been a priority for the NFL teams now. So it's like if you're following their blueprints, that's kind of how teams do win. It's like you stack the line and then build after. It's like it's like your anchor. So it's
and you can also argue too, like those teams with great O lines, they have weapons as well. Philly has weapons. Buffalo has weapons. Tampa has weapons. Detroit has weapons. You can have the freaking stacked O-line, but if no one is actually striking fear into DC or safeties in the back end or linebackers, everyone's gonna be like playing on their toes and like, okay, this team wants to run the football. They don't have speed on the outside. They can't get behind us. They have one receiver who can really, maneuver and get open by himself. But we know they want to run the football. We know that Justin Fields is a beast runner. So we'll keep an extra body in the box, or we'll keep a QB spy down there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, the offense could look very one-dimensional. But if you have a Tyler Warren, if you have whatever, a dynamic wide receiver, it's like, hold on a second. This guy can actually open things up a little bit. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like we could talk about this all night, but again, it's a good spot to be in because there's actually options. It's not like we're talking about, man, we really need a right tackle and there's none in this draft class, Yeah,
or you could just take Membu in round 1, trade a 5th round pick for Mayer. Problems are solved, dude. I always go back to him somehow. I got to work him in here somehow every week.
I would say Mayer's he would come in and be the best tight end on the roster.
And he probably, I'm not sure what the compensation would be though from what they would want in return. I'm sure it's not going to be a 5th round pick. He's definitely expendable, but not cheap though. So you got to compare you compare what your compensation is to what you could actually draft that spot. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you are like if you're Muji, you can like make arguments like, okay, he's not your tight end 1. He's had 2 disappointing seasons.
Yep.
You can maybe like go back and look at the Chip Kelly film and like, okay, you guys use 2 tight end sets.
Yep.
30% of the time, stuff like that to really like drive the price down.
Whittle it down.
Yeah.
All right. So it's somehow almost an hour and a half show. I don't know how this happened, but so your pick right now as of today is Membu.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, man, you're killing me. I'm back
The
to Tyler Warren.
doesn't end after pick number 7, man.
I'm back to Tyler Warren, I guess. I think I'm back to him again. I keep convincing myself because I just want playmakers, man. I'm worried about this.
It's not a bad pick. It's not wrong,
Okay, dude, you're right though. Every show I see, he rolls his eyes now at this point. He the mention of his name, Ian's like, oh, again with this guy.
He's good, man. Look, if like put yourself in like a hypothetical situation. Tomorrow, 11 o'clock, we look down at our phones. The Jets are acquiring Michael Mayer. Are you going to be excited or are you going to be mad? You're going to be excited. I think a lot of fans are going to be like, whoa, young tight end, high upside. Not going to be the tight end 1. We'll see, what happens with the offensive system. Now this kind of takes a need away, opening things up. So I don't know.
Flexibility in the draft. So thank you guys for joining us. Next week, we'll figure out a day and time. Probably, I don't know when we're going to do it. We'll figure it out, though. And we'll announce it to everybody. But usually, I saw Brian in the chat. We usually do shows every Tuesday, 7 o'clock. We go bounce it back from his channel to my channel. We go back and forth. We've been pretty consistent for like a couple of years now. Look at episode like 70 or something like that. It's pretty crazy. So we appreciate all the support. Less than a month away, man. Are you ready? What do you do for the draft? You kind of hang out? Are you like laser focused and like have like a little cheat sheet you cross lines off on, or how do you handle it?
It depends. I've really done like everything throughout the years with it. I'll be streaming this year with my brother. If you want to pop in, bro, feel
hell
free.
Yeah, I'm gonna call and just talk trash.
Yeah, dude, do it. And my brother's a Bills fan, so you could just talk trash to him too. But I don't know. I'm not gonna sit here and rule out with this new regime like a curveball, crazy type of pick, like Shamar Stewart or something like that, because we don't know how these guys like to operate and really what they value.
So do you have your own big board during the draft? Do you have this whole like thing that you kind of cross things off, or it's all in your head?
I'll do it. I'll do it mentally. Because I really try to, hang with everyone, while I'm streaming.
Yep.
I'm not going to sit here, watch the draft, look down at the big board, crossing names off, taking notes, and just, ignoring everyone. Like I always, like to have it kind of like as a big hangout.
I'll definitely be in your chat causing chaos. Then I'm definitely gonna harass you.
What do you like to do? Do you sit there like headphones on?
We used to stream it. We used to stream it all the time. And I like the last year, I just kind of hung out and just watch. I think I called in your show. I like to hang out and just watch it. I like to be surprised because when you stream it, everybody's telling you the picks in the chat and it kind of ruins it for you. I like to see the surprise, try to figure out like in the moment, what would I do? Like, all right, these guys have all fell. I kind of like I turn my phone over. I don't want to see anything. I want to make my own pick and based on why I did it and then see how it plays out. Then you can react to it like naturally instead of already. Because if you see it in the chat, you have time to calculate what you're going to say. I want to be surprised.
I know, dude. Never, bro. I hate the spoilers. And luckily, the last couple of years, I'm actually thinking. I don't think I've ever been spoiled with a first round pick for the Jets because, it's coming.
Yeah.
Like on the chat. So I think it's just like subconscious. Like I'm not going to look at it. Like when that pick comes in, I'm just not going to look at the chat until after they do that, announcement. Cause I always like to capture my like reaction, like with my phone separately. Because like the older that I get, I remember like being really young and thinking to myself, like, man, it'd be so cool to like be Adam Schefter and like have all the details and like know kind of how the draft's going to play out. But like the older I get, it's like, it's fun to just kind of have that natural reaction or be able to call something live. Like, oh, Cleveland's going to do this. And then they go and do it. And you're like, oh, cool. That natural reaction though, it's just sick. I feel like, just the older I get, like there's not many things that like you get like super amped for, like that anticipation builds. But with the draft, it's just like, I don't know. I just don't want it spoiled.
Like say, for example, like Will McDonald, I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I'm like, what? Who? What? Like, I was like, he caught me so off guard. I was like, didn't see this one coming. I didn't know what to do. I was like, but that was a natural reaction. You're like, all right. He jumps over cars. Like you're trying to scramble now. Like, all right, didn't expect this one. So I like that natural reaction. I like the thought process behind it. Like, all right, we know who's on the board for the next 10 minutes. Who would I take here and why? And then when the opposite happens, they go, okay, why'd they do this? And you can compare it. And that's a lot more fun for me, man. I enjoy that 10 times more.
Yeah, I mean, even in the Zach Wilson one, that Zach Wilson and 2019 with Quinnen, I remember there were some Ed Oliver rumors with the Jets.
Yeah.
At spot number 3, but it was just like Quinnen was just too good to pass up. And I remember like when his name popped across the board, I was pumped. He was like the guy who I wanted realistically.
Yeah.
Even though it wasn't like the biggest need, it was just kind of like the BPA approach. But it's just like, okay, like you knew for months that it was going to happen.
Yeah. No, I love it. I like just the anticipation, and then it's just then all the reactions, the overreactions, all the analysts. So it's a good time. So everybody, draft night, go to his channel. We're all gonna go in your chat and bother you and harass you and yell at you.
No, dude, it's a big hangout, man. I'm looking forward to it.
So thank you guys for joining us. We went an hour and a half somehow. So we apologize for that. Every week, usually 7:00 Tuesdays, we go back and forth here. You know who he is. Just make sure you follow him, and we'll talk to you guys next week.